Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Nitsitapi, Sutina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is May 23rd, 2025. Welcome to Native Calgarian Podcast. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by the Satu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. For those who can't afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel where you can go and subscribe, or you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share things you've learned to your network. And I'm going to get into that a little more, unfortunately. Oki naganago mekoche chestokomaki dakots nagotine siku. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and they pronouns. I'm Satu Dene. My lineage roots me in the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Delaney. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my nation is uninvited to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning many big dog town, which was named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important. The darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. My late great grandfather is Milo Biwell from Delaney. His daughter Alice is my late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but our Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act and Post status card is a colonial construct meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous to spirit or the Indigenous to us LGBTQ community and Indigenous women are purposefully at the bottom of the Canadian socio-economic ladder because of imposed poverty, colonial trauma, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. I am not a social worker nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous peoples. But I share my journey as a ADHD Dene mom navigating this colonial, ableist, misogynistic, racist world in 2025. I think of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation and as a treaty partner. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would be a part of a treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation, honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former drafter, I can teach you more, but you actually have to go to nativecalgarian.com for more. So last week I talked a lot about the fact that we have Vladimir Zelensky coming to Calgary and the second largest Ukrainian population in the world in Canada. And I have yet to see any like parade or movement or encouragement by elected officials or government officials in any capacity about how it is we can honor said man. But hey, I'm not Ukrainian, so what do I know? I'm just kidding. I say that in jest because to me it's absolutely deplorable. I mean, you have people that would come from Winnipeg. Like, this is a chance for Tourism Calgary to fucking do something. But, you know, we just want people eating at restaurants. Come to this new location and I'll get a new influencer to show this new location. That's yay. Okay, here we go. So, I wanted to address a lot of the bullshit I am seeing online from basically just regular Canadians. Like it's depressing because they're, you know, getting a lot of followers, but they know nothing about politics. So, for example, one that I see going quite viral in threads was from this one saying, basically Trump is coming to Canada. That's not okay. And I'm like, do you know how the world works? Like that sounds like one of the most ignorant comments I've ever heard in my life. And I said to somebody today or the other day when we were talking about the G7, like I'm left of left because Indigenous people, we don't fit in your right, center, left paradigm because we are completely differently, like we are different governance. We are on our lands, we have our different governance, and you brought this Westminster system over to our lands and thinks that you don't know your own laws, you don't know your own system, and then you come onto the internet and you spew a bunch of crap that you don't understand, which is totally unfair to us as Indigenous people because one, you're supposed to be a treaty partner. You don't even know that. Second of all, um, we have to study not just the Westminster system, but we have to know our laws. We have to know our, um, you know, the way we actually govern. We have to know your stupid Indian Act that your people imposed on us. And we have to try to navigate all of this as diplomatically as we can. Whereas Canadians, they just have no concept, get to talk about, I don't know, the new Vietnamese restaurant that opened and then spew this garbage. So I will say Trump is allowed to come to the G7. So is all the G7 nations. Like this is not new. A lot of the conversation I'm seeing is, oh my God, we can't let felons cross our borders, pearl clutching. Yes, we do all the time. Right now, we have a massive um, a national conversation happening in London, Ontario, about more NHL players who have decided that they're going to be misogynistic perverts and continue their pervertery that they constantly do. And and the other thing is, I'm really sad because for the new generation of Canadians, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so terrible." I grew up in Sylvan Lake. It is a rape culture. It was when I grew up there. We had a hockey school. All of the major people that are running the Hockey Canada, the NHL, they're all from there. So we got, people who the Sutters are from Red Deer. Even Ron McLean's from Red Deer, for God's sakes. Like this area of Sylvan Lake and lots of hockey camps all across the country. They breed this, white male privileged mentality, the settler colonial mentality. And so that's the way they behave. And now, when I was your age, we had the Sheldon Kennedy and Graham James thing come out. And Theron Fleury, like a lot of people, hate his politics, but it's deeply rooted in literal sexual abuse from Hockey Canada and the NHL that everybody goes, "What abuse?" and looks away about, just like they look away from the rape culture, just the way they look away from the violence against women that are being disproportionately murdered. We're finally starting to use the word femicide. So yeah, we let felons cross our borders. They're in the NHL. They're in, the all of the sports. They come here all the time. So it sounds disingenuous. It sounds ignorant, and it also erases misogyny. I just have no time or patience for that. So if you really are like, oh my God, we can't do this, you're not going to be allowing business happening across this border, which I would be great. I'd be happy about. Like, we have the Calgary Stampede every year. I can't imagine the amount of felons that cross our border just for that to happen. But y'all look away from that, right? So we just have a bunch of dead Indigenous people, but you're all good with the exploitation of Indigenous people. So, like, it's so hypocritical to read some of these things. And, some people pointed out obvious things like, yes, we have felons in our parliament. We absolutely do. It's not, oh my God, the right is attacking me by pointing this out. This is literally somebody who like this is just the way it is in Canada. Yes, I wish people did not let felons cross our border, but we do it all the time. And I hate Trump as much as you do. Like half of my notifications that, my algorithms are set. I put fuck Trump in my, uh, you know, social medias. And if they are allowed to stay, which they're usually taken down and I get a red flag for, um, ultimately nobody sees them. The algorithms hide them. So, with the deepest respect to people, like the things that you cry about when it comes to politics, don't cry about that. Cry about the issue of that we just allow felons and crooked people to be city councilors, to be MLAs, to be, I think you call them MPPs out in Ontario. And then, of course, our members of parliament, our federal members of parliament, like that's just normal. Killing natives, normalized in Canada. And I wish it wasn't, but it is what it is. Yeah, there are people who are just disingenuous. Just block them. If somebody's saying criminal Trudeau, that's just disingenuous. And a lot of people were like, well, it's Alberta, so they're going to welcome Trump. Actually, you're exactly right. Just the conversation I had last podcast about Zelensky, we should be having the same one about Trump. Like, how do we welcome, like him or not? Like, I fucking hate Trump, and I'm sad they missed, but it is what it is. I'm not going to be perpetuating violence against anyone, let alone Trump or Zelensky. Um, but other people might. So that's why we need to have this conversation. So that said, welcome all our CMPs, CSIS, and losers that are pining to be cops for listening. I appreciate you listening. Um, I did see your posts about where we're allowed to protest. I'm following for others who are not the G7. There's G7 Canada, and there's like then the actual folks who are doing security and such. So they're called the Integrated Safety and Security Group, and they have established G7 designated demonstration zones. And I find this hysterical. So for in 2002, when we had the G7 come here, which I have lots of pictures of their planes, like so it is kind of interesting as just a common folk person to see, Air Force One and the duplicate and all of the G7 nations, they do that. And Calgary Airport, like you could see that. Um, Not them fly in, but where they parked their planes, like they're really far away. You can't go and touch them by any stretch, but you can take pictures of them. And I mean, I grew up in Sylvan Lake, so Penhold at that time used to have air shows all the time. So, I still had that mentality, oh, we can just go to the airport and take pictures, and we did. I don't know if this time they're going to allow that because obviously I feel like we've had World War III for a while here, but I'm alone in naming it that way, and I feel like we're really in a kind of a wartime time now, so that we have to be a little more careful. So I'm pretty sure this time we probably won't see any of those planes at all. And respectfully, you know, if the RCMP and Canada and these security groups gave a flying fuck about natives and actually implemented any of the things we talk about, I would be on side with them and being like, okay, I understand why we do some of these things that we have to do. I mean, I don't want to see Zelensky and frankly Trump be assassinated in my town. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for our town. I don't want that black mark. Um, and when I say black mark, I'm going to take that back because I think that is rooted in racism, anti-black racism as well. I don't want to have us known on a map for that. We have a lot of other reasons, tar sands, mining, those are things we should be focused on anyway. And that's why I'm going to be protesting for sure anyway. Um, it's funny because on one hand, you have the Canadian government and the G7 security groups saying, oh no, lawful protest is protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They say that, but I remember the G20 that happened in Toronto. I remember the kettling. Um, but let's take the win. Bill Blair is not the you know, security guy for Canada anymore, the MP that does public safety. We have a new one. That's a little spicy scandal though, but regardless. Another thing that folks probably who are not from Calgary wouldn't know is that our chief of police, Mark Neufeld, just stepped down from his role. So I know there's a lot of speculation about why, and I'm not going to speculate as to why, but I do know we had the G7 coming, so I would imagine he would be utilized in some capacity there, even if he isn't the chief of the Calgary Police at this moment. I know the RCMP are mainly going to be heading this and CSIS, and obviously we're in Calgary. This is like Harper's buddy with IDF, so I'm sure. Hi, Israel. I hope you're doing well. I will get to you in a minute, and we'll talk about that. But we're going to have a lot of different security groups from a lot of different nations here in Calgary. So, like, I understand the need to have some protocols, and I understand trying to work with them. I just know how disingenuous, all of these people are, and that's what makes it difficult because I've tried to work with them. I tried to talk to them about, solutions, especially for Native issues, and they're just disingenuous. They don't really care. And I can say for the 2002 G7, I'm going to talk about somebody that a lot of you may not know, and I encourage you to Google him. His name is John, and Jon Boncore, Boncore, and his spirit name was Splitting the Sky. And this was a fucking legend, folks, just a legend. He was in the riots at that jail that's at in New York, that island. Anyway, in 2002, he was like, "I'm going to go arrest George W. Bush," and I was there protesting, as well, but I wasn't with him at that moment that he was getting arrested, and so he's just a legend for that. He died not too long after that. And despite all of his activism that he ever did, his family asked us not to make a conspiracy of it, even though like this was one of the OGs of the 9/11 truth movement as well. So I miss him. I honor him. I honor his spirit, and I think about him as this new G7 is coming because if he was here, he would absolutely have opinions and he would be voicing them. And I think there's a lot of things to voice. I mean, I even tweeted at Greta Thunberg. I'm like, "Hey, you coming to Calgary?" Because I know, like internationally, like real activists are coming here. I'm not trying to diminish the activism that I do or that other people in the city do. It's just that some of these activists actually do get paid, really are funded, really do have, white people, white settlers on their side and fund them properly. And they have lawyers, and people who care about actually supporting them. Local activists anywhere, they never get support. They never get real help. Um, Many times I come and share activists from anywhere in the globe, let's say Colombia or Mexico, who are being murdered by Canadian mining companies. And of course, that's not news here. And settler Canadians like, "Oh my God, what do you mean?" Because they don't pay attention. So the local activists, the actual indigenous people, will be like, "Hey, did you guys know this is happening?" And it's like, yeah. And that's why as a Calgarian, as a native, I have to protest what Shell is doing here or Chevron's doing here or whatever because their head offices are here. And Canadian laws basically allow for the exploitation of Indigenous lands globally and without Britain. But that we are still a part of the Commonwealth. We are still British in so many ways. So it's just a interesting time and place to be here, and yet having so many folks completely oblivious to all of the things that are happening. So when the G7 comes, we don't have a whole lot of like activism really happening right now. We had some kind of, worker solidarity save the date, which I shared. But other than that, I just know we're going to have demonstrations the entire time they're here. And I encourage that because these are the richest, most powerful nations in the world. They rightfully could do way more, choose not to, so that, um, people who think they're middle class can live a life that allows them to be middle class and have a bit of a life, whereas the rest of us don't. So, anyway, if you're interested in your bubble zones, you can follow them on the Twitters or the Facebook because they're posting about it, and plan your protest accordingly. I think it's a joke only because I don't know how many natives are going to be murdered between that time and this time, and how many vigils we're going to have to do. And I'll get to Levon Fox's walk here in a moment. Um, okay, some fun update for last week when we talked about the park talk. And this was the n- fans only thirst traps who are being used in order to try to raise awareness of the cuts that Trump did to the national parks. Again, so that we can exploit that land and hopefully make money for upper class people, not middle class or regular people for sure. Um, anyway, I opened up my TikTok this morning, and the first thing I seen was his name is Jonathan, and I can't remember his handle, but he was like, apparently I was mentioned on Stephen Colbert, and so I just love that because at least it's getting national attention. And his TikTok this morning was about his granny going, "What the hell?" in the best way though. So anyway, I love that because I've seen a lot of like he did one that said he's not going to choose between Banff and Jasper. Can he do both? He was just being cheeky, right? Like, hey, can I do both? And I'm laughing and I'm like, actually, do you need a tour guide? And I was doing that cheekily, but the truth is, my husband and I, when we were scuba diving instructors and we used to teach out at Banff, um, we were forced in our last years to become so-called wardens. We had to do this little test in order to show that we knew, that we were certified by Banff National Park. And it's a cute little test. And, my daughter was I don't know, what do you call it, a litter ranger or something, where they have programs for kids and stuff, right? So it is actually a lot of fun. I could probably do a whole episode of me nerding out on Banff and Minnewanka. Could do another one on scuba, but that's for another day. I just do hope that people understand that these parks are stolen Indigenous lands, whether in the States or Canada, and that we, as Indigenous people, don't have access to our own lands because of the loopholes of this. And um, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that broke my heart this morning that, a lot of Canadians probably are still unaware of. And in fact, I'm from Calgary. We have the deep-rooted hate influential money people here, right? So we have Harper, we have all of his Israel companies, we have all of the people who know how to be dirty in conservative politics. They're all here. And they've done a really great job of, blaming natives for over 150 years. And now, in today's era with technology, using this technology to spread misinformation, not just about Indigenous people, but everything, but specifically about Indigenous people, and starting this Indian residential school denialism. And as a result, we have even more barriers, and I have to waste more time educating racists. And it's really frustrating for someone like myself because we've been doing this work. We've been giving this information for 10 years on these, technologies. I think of a wonderful local social media guru who really encouraged everyone to do this. And her name was Loa Bibi. Her name is Loa Bibi. She does fantastic TikToks to highlight the Blackfoot Confederacy. And I really look up to her. And I hope everybody who follows me follows her TikToks, follows her social media. She was really the OG of the Indigenous community doing social media for good and never highlighting any bad stuff, which is like That's why she sucked me in. Like I am here because of her, in many ways. Anyway, before I continue on, I just think it's really important for people to understand that we are really fighting misinformation, and we're trying to educate, but people, they get inundated with, the global news, the CTV, the um, misinformation that's coming straight from the conservative camp that's bought and paid for misinformation, and they're confused, and they don't like look at the bigger picture and go, who are the actual indigenous activists in the city of Calgary? They don't do that. They go, "Oh, I'm just so overwhelmed and I'm so afraid to make a mistake and I just don't want to do that." Cool. So that's why when I ask people to share what they know, that's why this matters. Because the G7, all of their, security forces, they're all in misinformation too, because they personally benefit. The military industrial complex benefits from all of this. And I think Canadians deep down know, just like Trump supporters, they know what that means. And that means, killing Indigenous people, killing Black people, killing people of color, getting rid of them, putting them in ICE camps. Like, we as Canadians are so shitty. And it's really sad to see Canadians, liberal Canadians on the socials be proud of this. But like, we're literally the reason why they had to make Geneva Conventions, because we're so insanely gross. And I don't know, you just have all of these people with like intergenerational Christian trauma, perpetuating this on the world, that they had to make the Geneva Conventions. And some Canadians are stupidly proud of that. It's not something I have any pride in whatsoever, because my people have been on the receiving end of Canadian hate for over 150 years now. So, anyway, this is why this conversation about Alberta separation is happening as well, because they can get away with it. But I still haven't actually told the story. Fuck. I'm sorry for my ADHD. Um, I'm originally from the Northwest Territories. My people are. I was born in Calgary, but my family, my Indigenous family, is from Northwest Territories. And in their legislature, they were talking about the barriers that the Indian residential school people are experiencing, the survivors trying to do the work of, the buried sites and such, being in conflict with the legislation when it comes to archaeology. And like, our people are still dying. Our people died yesterday. They're dying today. They died the day before that, the day before that, the day before that. So I want you to imagine, your grandpa dies and somehow that's considered under some federal legislation of archaeology, when like that's your family. These are the barriers Indigenous people are facing now, trying to do the truth and reconciliation work. Meanwhile, you have this massive, massive military industrial complex of colonialism. Like, capitalism benefits from colonialism. So the sooner you can shut up all the natives, the sooner we don't have to deal with these policies. And that's what's happening. And Canadians are like, oh my God, I didn't know there was a 60s scoop. So we're not even close to the same page of having reasonable conversations. They're worried about a felon coming into Canada. And it's like, we bring in felons every day, my God. Um, so last week I talked about the treaty issues, especially, and the biggest update I have is like, obviously Treaty 11 and the Dene Nation come out strong, swinging as well, saying, this isn't merely about protocol, it's about respect, recognition, and fundamental rights of Indigenous people to be represented in these affairs. And you know, if you don't know this, if you're not seeing this, please share this information. If you're like, oh, I hate Michelle Robinson, native Calgarian, she's such a blah. Okay, fine. Go to cabinradio.com. Go in and follow them. Follow and share their stuff, because I need this information to get out there. And the sooner it gets out there, the better. I mean, I've been trying to educate Canadians, most specifically Calgarians, on treaty for 10 years now, and we're still having this conversation. It's frustrating because the people who claim to listen to my podcast aren't sharing this information. So then the very friends, family, neighbors that are like, oh my God, what treaty? Who cares about that? Let's separate because we're Albertans. They're not even having real conversations about the reality of how this works. So please, I'm asking you, if it doesn't have to be about treaty, it can be whatever it is you learned. Just share the information, please. Um, so today is what, Friday the 23rd. So it's been a really busy week. Britain, France, and Canada came out and are like, yeah, I think what Israel's doing might be wrong. It's like, you think? Now that the genocide's like, they've eliminated over what, 50,000 people, mainly women and children, a whole generation. And now we're like, yeah, maybe you did something wrong. Holy cow. And then conveniently, two Israeli diplomats were shot and killed in Washington, D.C. So, it's, you know, for me, what kind of false flag is this in order to try to gain sympathy for Israel? I mean, the IDF has been basically running North America for how many years? So it's just frustrating. 20 years, I would even longer. Um, I remember when 9/11 first happened and I first had to really understand what this meant. And that was when I learned about all the financial transactions that happened the day before 9/11. And and I just thought, if the financial transactions of September 10th isn't enough, you will never educate people on the reality of what happened. It is what it is. So, you know, I can't help but feel like this is a false flag. I don't think it's really helped Israel's cause. It is what it is. I don't see Israel the way the mainstream media is trying to portray it as a Jewish attack, because it's not. Uh, many Jewish community have come out in support of Palestine. So at this point in time, it's just Israel as a country, as a force, as a government, they are really backed into a corner alone now. But they've also killed, tens of thousands of people in such a short time. And Canadians just let it happen. They didn't say nothing. And all of the political parties demonized anyone who spoke out about it. So it's so incredibly frustrating we're here. I did want to let people know that I don't know if you say it Levon or Levon Fox, but like it looks like Devon, only with an L. That's how you spell it. He was shot and killed by the Calgary police 2 years ago, and his mom is, waiting for ACERT, and I know what ACERT's going to say, and I hate it, and there will be nothing wrong that the Calgary police possibly did. But understandably, she's mourning. She's in pain. She's wants to know what happened. So she's going to have a walk to commemorate her son's passing on May 29th. It's going to start at the Calgary Tower at 11 a.m. and it's going to end near Reconciliation Bridge at the site of the shooting. She is planning to have a meal and ceremony. That is our way. And this is news on APTN News. If you're not following APTN, please start following it because it's really important that you understand Indigenous issues too. Backing on that, Stephanie Harp from up north, she lives in I don't know, Edmonton, Fort McMurray, like northern Alberta part. She was a part of one of these white-led nonprofits, and they talked about starting something that was more specifically for men. And a lot of women in the MMIW movement have changed it to missing and murdered, exploited Indigenous peoples because that is more inclusive of the men and the Two Spirit. And I struggle with that. I'm not going to fucking debate it. It is what it is. A lot of people like using MMEIP now, and so. Anyway, Stephanie and that group really started something called Blue Jacket Day. And it was started in Edmonton on June 6, 2023. So this will be the second anniversary of it to try to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous boys and men. And, to kind of talk about May 5th as Red Dress Day and then having June 6th as Blue Jean Jacket Day. So I've shared this information on my social media every year, but it's only the second year. So I'm hoping people will learn more about it. Now, they actually have a website, www.mmeip.ca, and they'll have the Blue Jacket Day events that are happening as well. While it's mainly an Edmonton initiative, there's so many Calgarians that are also affected. I mean, every family across the country is affected by colonialism and the exploitation and the premature deaths. My own uncle in Edmonton passed away from dental care, and I've tried to talk to people. I'm going to do a whole episode on medical and dental racism, and it'll just piggyback off of all the stuff I've talked about, the pharmacists and doctors that I've experienced as well. But it's a real issue, and I just don't think Canadians understand the gravity of it. And a year ago, I asked people, I said, "Hey," or I said, I didn't ask anybody. I said, "Hey, now that Canadians are going to get dental, I wonder if they're going to be treated as bad as natives are." And I asked the question last week, so how's it going? And on TikTok, especially the types of response I got, mainly from folks with disabilities, low income, who said, the discrimination is black and white as soon as it is clear that you are, you know, governmentally funded disabilities, etc. So, like natives have always experienced that, but I'm, seeing non-Indigenous people. So I have to say this really clearly to people. If you're not fighting for folks with disabilities, like you are legitimately missing the point on any of the issues you are fighting for. Because that racism and discrimination and, classism, like it's the root of all this evil, one. And two, like that's it has to be a part of any conversation whether we're talking about Red Dress Day, Blue Jean Jacket Day, Indigenous issues, trans issues, women's health issues. But I know it's really hard to get there at first, so I'm just kind of trying to remind people the importance of it. And I mean, I'm still unpacking my ableism and internalized, disability hate. I don't know if there's a term for that yet, but I'm still unpacking it now that I understand what ADHD and autism are. And I know it's newer to talk about that, but anyway, I guess that's a whole episode too. I was sharing a bit about Acorn. It's a nonprofit group, a kind of a grassroots group. They have a wonderful initiative coming up tomorrow, this Saturday, about municipal civics, but they really do just focus on housing. And I think that's a really important issue that we should all be focused on. So there's Acorn chapters literally everywhere. They're a national group, and we're always trying to recruit more people. So if you're listening in Grand Prairie, if you're listening in Edmonton, if you're listening in, I don't know, Oshawa, Ontario, there has to be an Acorn chapter in your area. Please support your local grassroots groups like this, because these are the people trying to raise awareness about the very issues that are happening in your backyard, mine too. And I'm really happy with the folks that have been attached to the local one that we have here in Calgary. And really glad they're taking on municipal civics because, I ran for Ward 10. And when you go door knocking, and I mean, I've door knocked for every order of government, people don't know jurisdictions. They don't know whose responsibility is what. And so they'll talk to you about the crosswalk in front of the street, even if you're there to talk about the Liberal Party of Canada. It's really important that people start to understand the civics. And when I see gross misrepresentations of like why Trump shouldn't be allowed into Canada, it's like this is like civics 101, folks. Like my child understood this in grade 6 after grade 6 social studies. So I really hope people do a refresher on this issue because we really desperately need to address housing in this country. But as Indigenous people, we've always had a problem with land displacement and stolen land, and it's not solving itself. People have to start getting involved. Um, so speaking of which, I was at an event last night called We Were Taken. It was a documentary that was released at the Confluence, which is the old Fort Calgary. And It's a 45-minute documentary. It's on YouTube. I have shared the link already on all my socials, but if you search We Are Taken, you'll see it was done by um, the John Humphreys Peace and Justice group, which I've tried to deal with before. And, they are adorable and sweet. They're a group of people that are mainly students trying to get their hours, getting some sort of degree, but they don't really know the issues and are pretty much learning as they go. Regardless, they are the parent nonprofit that helps the 60s Scoop Indigenous Alberta group with their finances. So they get to get a shout out on the film as well and get to host it. And I was really sad being there. Adam North Pagan, he founded the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta and got Rachel Notley to give the apology. The apology was highlighted in the credits of this 45-minute documentary. And, it's when they took questions from the audience, it was painfully clear nobody had read the 94 calls to action, have no idea about child welfare, did not make any sort of connection on that. You know, the misinformation that was coming from the actual, questions. I felt so bad for these 60 Scoop survivors trying to answer these questions. After they watched this documentary, they thought, oh, let's traumatize the survivors by asking them questions that are wholly inappropriate. And then categorizing them as only in the 60s. And it's like they made it abundantly clear in the documentary and while they were speaking, today there are children being apprehended at these hospitals because of deep-seated rated racist healthcare and racist child welfare practices that we have continually in this country, and people aren't doing anything about it. And I'm sad to say their only ask was that we share this 45-minute documentary, watch it and share it, and try to raise awareness about what the 60 Scoop is. And I'm sad we're just there. I'm sad that the TRC came out, 10 years ago, and we are still, oh my God, I didn't know the 60 Scoop existed. Tell me you haven't read the National Inquiry, the 231 calls to justice, the 94 calls to action without telling me. Like it's painful. And I'm not even a 60 Scoop like survivor. One of the things that one of the survivors did say was that in their organization they have a person who doesn't say the term survivor. They say thriver. So like they're thriving, right? Which I loved that, but it was painful. It was really painful that in 2025 people are still this oblivious. So when I ask you folks to please share what you've learned, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a place where I need you to share this information so that we're not educating people every day on the basics, Indigenous 101. Some of the comments that were said, like Call to Action 57 is ongoing anti-racism and Indigenous education for all public servants. I ask people every day, show me your measurables. What have you done? We should be able to say we've had, 6 meetings on this topic or whatever. Like it should be made way more, but at least it's something to show people you're doing that work. And we're not seeing that. And I'm not seeing these so-called, social media warriors and keyboard warriors out in the community, one, but also pushing their elected officials on this. And those solutions weren't even talked about last night because last night it was like, oh my God, I didn't know Native people had to deal with this, as if it was in the past, as if it's not today. So to say I'm upset, triggered, frustrated, all of the things is an understatement. I wish y'all would do more about this. Um, Measles. So let's talk about that. Indigenous people have never gotten proper health care in this goddamn country. Um, but non-natives, they're the ones leading this epidemic. that's happening across the country. Now, Alberta's the worst at it. We have lots of pockets of, very religious people that don't vaccinate. I would never judge a Native person for not vaccinating because we don't get proper health care at all. Access to them, but also that bigger picture that like we could solve TB today, but we choose not to. And it's disproportionately affecting Indigenous people. And Canadians are A-okay with that policy because the sooner we die, the sooner you get to steal all of our land and minerals and resources and make money. So, with the deepest respect, white Canadians, settler Canadians, holy shit. It isn't shocking to me. Like, you don't understand how triggering it is for Indigenous people who, you know, the ones that are here survived smallpox, survived TB, survived all of these other disgusting infections that you all bring over here, and then don't give us health care despite the treaty right to health. So, you know, if you're Indigenous, I know that the Indigenous doctors would want you to get vaccinated for it. I don't blame you for not. But I have a small platform, and I'm going to use that platform to encourage you, even myself, trying to encourage my daughter to get their measles shot. You know, I struggled with getting her fully vaccinated as a baby because you can't verbalize what's happening. You know, if you're not feeling well, you have a headache, your arms hurt, whatever. When you're a baby, you can't say those things, but they're not a baby anymore. And so, if you were like me and hesitant to vaccinate after a horrifically racist experience in the hospital, one, I know there's been no resources for me either. We got midwifery funded because of that, and I'm grateful that that's in Samantha's birth story. But that bigger picture, if you feel strong enough to go get that shot, please do as native to native. But for you non-Indigenous, I have no fucking time or patience for you. I really don't. You know, I can honestly say it wasn't the MMR that caused my daughter's autism or ADHD. And now I understand how, neurologically it's different. But I did see when my daughter was first born in 2007, I seen kids who would get that shot and they would change after that shot. And now that I'm trying to understand ADHD and autism, I am beginning to believe it was, you know, the inflammation, the intergenerational trauma that comes into inflammatory autoimmune diseases. Like I can see how it's all interconnected, but I certainly couldn't verbalize this in 2007. Um, Regardless, I just hope people get their shots. Uh, for the Indigenous Book Club coming up, we do this every month. We do it the second Monday of each month, and because our next month is June, we have Mischief Eagle Testicle by Kent Monkman and Giselle Gordon, Volume One. And if you read into Volume Two, that's great. Just full disclaimer, I have read a few two-spirit authored books, and I am an embarrassed old white. I'm just going to say white because settler colonial mentality. Like I have that thinking, and I just feel like such a prude. So if you want to come just for fun to point and laugh at me, please do. And all us older ladies. Um, yeah, I'm hoping to it'll be a fun book club for those who want to talk about it, that's for sure. Come join us. And you just go to I mean, I have a link tree. I have it on my pin posts. I have it accessible and I still get emails asking me for the link, which I send obviously immediately. But I also want to give a special shout out to Arc of the Medicine Line by Tony Rees. That's our November book club. And only because we're talking about treaty, we're talking about 51st state, we're talking about Trump, in Canadian sovereignty. If you want to have an intelligent conversation, I was lucky enough to have geomatics courses under my belt from SAIT. You all aren't. Can we have somewhat of an educated conversation in November about this topic there? Anyway, If you are a settler and you're like, oh my God, these poor natives, I want to do so much more, wrong mentality. Reconciliation Action Group, which I co-founded, we try to help people understand white saviorism is not what we're looking for. We're looking for allies. And if you have a white savior mentality, you're sure not helping us. You're not an ally. So I need you to understand that. Read White Fragility, read Nice Racism, read by Black authors, read Indigenous content. Now, all of my Indigenous book clubs, they're online, they're part of the podcast. So I hope you listen and maybe learn something. And again, maybe share what you learned because if you're not telling your other settler friends what you're learning, they just are going to continue to be ignorant. They need reminders. So, for no other reason, if you could share, that would be great. And you don't have to credit me. You can go find a Pam Palmater video or a CBC video and share that as part of that in order to help other people learn. Because I want a better world for our kids and our grandkids. This isn't about me, this is about the next generation. So, anyway, on that note, Masi Cho to my ancestors, to my granny and my mom of what strength looks like through your examples. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be blunt and strong, aka autism. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots and stepping up and teaching me how to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her. I am a second generation Calgarian. Thank you to my husband, Big Buffalo Rockman, for producing and editing the show, on top of being my husband, my childhood friend, the father of our child, and my support down this road of racism and colonialism. He has witnessed all of the sexism, all of the racism for all these decades. To our child, Thunderpipe Necklace Woman, we are blessed to learn from you. You show us daily how to be better people, and we are so honored you chose us. And I hope if I'm accountable to nobody else in this world, it's to you. Um, to the Blackfoot, the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. And I heard that echoed in the documentary last night because, they were called in to help with that documentary. And I got to see amazing activists like Nina Wilson in there too. Anyway, they taught me how to pronounce my Blackfoot name, my spirit name. Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce it in Satu Dene, which I will always be grateful for. My humblest apologies to any language keepers and the elders as I learn proper pronunciation. Um, my patron account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. I also accept e-transfers at nativeyyc@gmail.com. I can't thank my donors enough for showing your support and any previous donor who ever helped us at any point in time. Um, I value you and I appreciate you showing me that you value listening and watching and we're able to give. I appreciate you. Masi Cho. For those who cannot afford to give, I would love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, or you can send in your comments or questions. We also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And I guess the last thing I will talk about is my little trinket. For those who don't know, we got a puppy at a couple of months ago, and he is growing like a weed. And I have decided his name is not just Trinket. He got his name Trinket for giving us rocks and sticks and all sorts of fun stuff. But oh, he's just so curious. He's in all like he's a puppy. He's curious and he's in all the trouble all the time. So I've been calling him Mayhem a lot lately. So now he is Trinket Mayhem Robinson. So if you are following us, we have Trinket Tales on TikTok, and my husband's kind of doing that TikTok more so, just so you can watch him grow with us. And yeah, just love that little puppy. Poor Hugo. He is our other puppy. I call Hugo the best boy and I do it in front of Trinket. And I say, Trinket, you're the best boy in training. So our best boy, Hugo, he got himself a new cushion that we put at the window, and he's been laying on it, looking out the window, and our neighbor's like, he's so sad looking. And I said, I know, because he gets no love from anyone, clearly. And we were all joking in jest because obviously they watch us walk him twice a day on top of having a backyard to go play in. So, yeah, it's just been a real joy in my life. And, Sam is graduating and seeing her get her newest regalia and moccasins that we got. I just we are very honored and lucky to have a good life for this moment. And and for folks who have been asking me about my mom and how she's doing, we still have no word yet about the hip surgery that was supposed to be in April, that's going to take a month. So now I've gone April, May, and going into June with no income because I have to be on standby to take care of her for a month. And we have no concept when this hip surgery is going to happen. So that's what's going on in that world. So thank you all who have asked me. If you've made it to this part of the podcast and listening, thank you. I always end with giving side eye to Calgary Rabbits. As a hair Dana, you're lucky I'm not tradish. My beautiful cousin responded, or you'd be in my dish. Thanks, folks, for listening.